Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Escott Game. Apologies for the mishap before, but I'll explain that in a second. But yes, welcome to Escott Game, where we give you the X's, the O's, and the insights of NBL 1 East. Thank you for joining us tonight live on YouTube and Instagram. And remember, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Escott Game. Or you can continue to find our episodes uploaded onto your preferred streaming platforms. On this week's episode, we will be covering our Escott game of the week between the Newcastle Falcons and the Albury Wodonga Bandits women. We'll also be covering our top performances of the week and of the round, I should say. And later we'll have an interview with a very special guest. But let me just say, first and foremost, again, apologies for the mishap an hour ago. It's me, it's your girl Squin here, who didn't realize that New South Wales had ended daylight savings and was frantically jumping online an hour ahead, as being in Queensland, there is the time difference, frantically calling and texting Lockie to make sure he was okay. And then in the meantime, catastrophizing that perhaps something bad had happened to him. Perhaps he was in an accident. Perhaps he collapsed at home. Perhaps he got hit off his bike. All of these things were going through my mind, and instead, it was just daylight savings ended. Lockie, how are you?
Well, I haven't been hit by a car. I haven't collapsed at home. I'm actually doing all right. Thank you for checking in on me.
Yeah. You know what? That's totally fine. I would rather catastrophize and go to the lengths that I did, just in case something did happen. And I'm very glad to find out that it was just the ending of daylight savings. Probably also reflecting that I don't watch the news at all. But I don't think that would have made news in Queensland anyway, given that they hate daylight savings with a passion. We're going to head to first with our Escott Game headlines of the week. And Lockie, you had a couple of headlines from the men's competition. Take us through it.
Well, I think what else can we lead with but Kouat Noi signing with a Sutherland team that's already sitting at 2-0, bringing in a player who probably instantly goes to the top of the player rankings in NBL 1 East, if not the country. Just an absolutely massive signing for the Sharks, who have already started the season pretty well, getting wins. They got win against Penrith, and a Penrith team that picked up a win this week, and they beat Hills on the weekend, and they're just getting stronger and stronger. So, Kouat Noi, who, great in the NBL, was great playing over in China for a few weeks, kind of in the meantime, and another very big addition to the club and the league.
Yeah, absolutely. All the rumors were true that Kouat Noi was joining the East. And it's just another big boost for the league. But it looks like you've also got a headline for us about the Newcastle Falcons men.
Well, Newcastle Falcons men, after falling in both games of their doubleheader, now sit at 0-3, which is not the spot you want to be. Particularly, they come up against Illawarra next week in the Steel City Showdown. And, is it more of the same for the Falcons? We were so high on them last year and they came up short. Is the same happening again? Because it's not been a good start, and already they're looking at having to go at least 11-6 for the rest of the campaign, which is going to be tough to do in this league. So definitely a turnaround in short order required for the Falcons men.
Any news on the arrival of O'Boyle?
Well, he's still over in Switzerland, and I don't think their regular season doesn't even finish for another, I think, this coming weekend. But if I have it correct, I think all bar one team in the Swiss League makes the playoffs. So he's probably going to have at least one round of playoffs. So it could be a while.
Yeah, so hopefully the remaining roster for the Newcastle Falcons can start to rally around and try and get a win against Illawarra next weekend, or at least start to head in that upward trajectory towards towards getting some more wins. But also the Comets men sounds like they had a tough battle against Illawarra, but made a good game of it in the end.
Yeah, so this was one of the games I called with Will Constantinidis. It was absolutely great to finally get to call a game with Will, who actually, he messaged me last year and said, I want to get into NBL 1 commentary. Can you help me out? And I got him in touch with Comets, and we finally got to call a game together. But yes, like Leo O'Boyle, Bawali Bales is still over in Switzerland, and didn't Comets feel it in the first quarter against Illawarra, trailing 34-13. Just lacking a little bit of energy, did the Comets boys, until Sharif Saipea got into the huddle and told them what's what, and then came out and did the same on court. But they got back within 2 or 3. The second quarter was a complete turnaround. It actually became a really tight game by halftime, but I think it was 45-42 at halftime after being 34-13 after a quarter, but just gave themselves too much to do against a really good Illawarra team. So just Comets just had to come out of the blocks faster, and just hopefully that's not a game that comes back to bite them, because for the latter 30 minutes of the game, they were as good, if not better, than the Hawks, but just put themselves in too big a hole at the start of the game. But still treading water reasonably well without Bawali Bales. And I mean, if you can, you lose by 7, that means you were plus 14 for 3 quarters against Illawarra without Bawali. That's definitely a positive to take out of that game.
Definitely. And, like one of the coaches' cliches is that they need to learn to put 4 quarters together. Usually coaches are referring to a lapse in the 3rd or the 4th quarter, and not always the 1st. So that sounds like the case for the Comets on the weekend. But who got a big win on the weekend in the men's competition was the Penrith Panthers.
Wasn't it just getting an 84-72 win over Manly? Mason Bragg had 18 and 7 and 3 with 6 steals. Preston Purify had 21. But just people stepping up. No Ben Kierans for Penrith as well. He did twinge that ankle against Sutherland, so I wonder if that was what was keeping him out. But Jet Hickson stood up, the young man, 15 points in 18 minutes. Lockie Charlton, the Penrith champion, back in the teal and black. He had 20 points. And Zeke Evans, the man from Lithgow, 16 and 12 with 5 assists and 3 steals. And Jonah Perez, back from Bankstown. He's been looking really good in the early stages. So this Penrith side, they ran Sutherland really close, and that was with Benny Kierans playing on an ankle that he tweaked in the first possession of that game and just kept playing. Told me after the game, he had to keep playing to keep it warm, because if he'd sat down, it would have got cold, and then he wouldn't have been able to even walk on it. And got a win against the Manly side that I think most people expect to be really challenging for playoffs. So good signs at the foot of the mountains. And for Manly, they dropped to 1 and 2. So it's looking very interesting in the early stages of the men's competition. Probably more at the lower end of the table than who's at the top.
Yeah, definitely. And I think after a few rounds, we might have to have a look at take a closer look at the ladder, because after 2 rounds, it's not too much telling a story just yet, but maybe by around 5 or 6 we'll be able to take a closer look at it and start to make some of those mathematical predictions that you're so good at, Lockie. I still don't know how to do it.
I think after that Friday-Sunday doubleheader on Anzac Day weekend, I think that's when things might be shaking out. A lot of teams will have played 5 or 6 games by then, and we might start getting a picture starting to develop.
Very good. And now some headlines from the women's competition. We have the Bankstown Bruins, unfortunately starting their season as 0-3, still awaiting the arrival of Davida Dale, who is still playing overseas. They take on Sutherland next weekend, who have started their season 0-2. Lockie, do you think this is going to be a game that's going to separate Bankstown and Sutherland to opposite sides of the ladder, or is this maybe one that's too early to tell?
I think, especially with no Davida Dale, who's still overballing for Manchester, I just think it's a game that I don't think it's to separate it. It's just to really keep them in touch, kind of thing. You've got, especially Bankstown being 0-3, but Sutherland, if they drop to 0-3, like I said with Newcastle men, just putting themselves in a hole early that you just don't want to have to drag yourself out of, because it gets to the point where you have to start playing perfect basketball for 13 weeks straight, and nobody wants to have to do that. And nobody does that, except for Albury Wodonga women last year, obviously.
And it looks like Jada Rice has made her NBL 1 East debut on the weekend as well. And so I'm sure that now she's going to be well in the mix with her fellow Bankstown Bruins. They're going to start growing in confidence and performing a few more. So certainly not a team to count out just yet. And something that was very surprising on the weekend in the women's competition, the Central Coast Crusaders women scoring only 16 points at the half. The opening quarter was, they played, Newcastle Falcons at home at the Breakers Indoor Sports Stadium. The opening quarter was 6-22, with the second quarter 10-16. So I was watching part of this game and was absolutely gobsmacked to see that halfway through the second quarter, Crusaders was still only 8 points total. So, but 16 points at the half is probably unheard of. I think it's 1 point of the game. I think by halftime, actually, the Crusaders women were only averaging 18% from the field.
Yeah, and with the players who can put the ball in the basket from all kinds of range like they have, that's concerning to say the least.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that is perhaps one that may need some further analysis on another day. But taking a look at the box score, you still had Leilani Mitchell shooting at 6 from 14, which was 42.86% overall. Domkins maybe on the more shallow side compared to what we're used to. She had 13 points shooting at 4 and 11. But Jazz Falcadilla just still struggling to find her feet and consistency with scoring, just 3 from 16 in that game. But to be fair, they did come up against Newcastle, whose defense has been outstanding to start this 2025 season.
I mean, a lot of teams are going to have bad days against Newcastle, but I mean, 16 points still, yeah, not a great timeout. I mean, they did manage, 33-31 was the second half score, still in Newcastle's favor. So they managed to rally in the second half, but you just said it before, got to put 4 quarters together.
That is correct. But over to some more positive news from the women's competition. The Albury Wodonga Bandits women had a doubleheader away, first playing Maitland Mustangs on the Saturday, and they came up with a 19-point turnaround in the third and fourth quarter. Actually, yeah, it was over the third and fourth quarter, and this game was literally a case of another coach's cliche of the game is won and lost in the last 5 minutes. So it looked like the Bandits were down and out. It looked like Maitland was going to get a win at home, and then it just took Katie Jones, who was just setting the NBL 1 East on fire, to really get her team going. She scored 9 straight points to kind of put the Bandits back on track, and the Bandits winning that one, just snatching that one from the grasp of Maitland Mustangs in the end.
Yeah, I think Sammy Mack posted that it was a 23-2 run. So, it wasn't a 19-point turnaround where it was 30-11. They put, or something like that. They really put the clamps on Maitland during that stretch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really, really great performance to watch. Perfect execution, beautiful team play. So if you have the time, I recommend watching that game in the replay that you can find on the NBL 1 website, of course. And then the final headline from the women's competition is, now please correct me if I get this pronunciation wrong, Lockie, but Kelly Chase, who we initially announced in an earlier episode as an import, well, big question mark import, but at least a signing for the Penrith Panthers women. Unfortunately, unable to suit up as a local player for the Panthers because she would have been the third import. But she has found a new home at the Sydney Comets. Did you get to see her in action on the weekend?
You already know I got to see her in action on the weekend, Squid, because I was commentating her game, which Comets won against Illawarra. Oh, she is lightning quick. Gets up and down court with the ball really quick. Great movement on defense. Just a little bit and in a Comets team that probably needed a bit of backcourt reinforcement, bit of depth. Just a great foil for Perini. Just provides a little bit of something different. And yeah, I think Kelly Chase, Piper Anderson, can we get them in maybe a 94-foot sprint race? Because definitely got some speed there.
Awesome. It sounds like, it's great that Kelly is able to play a season, and it sounds like a perfect addition for the Comets women. So all's well that ends well in the NBL 1 East. But just before we get into our ESCOT game of the week for round 2, just saying hello to some of those tuning in live on YouTube. Just a reminder that if you're able to comment on the YouTube live stream, we're able to see it here in the back end. And so feel free to ask us some questions. And if possible, we can get to it during the episode. And that goes for those watching on Instagram Live. We've got some Sutherland Sharks love in the Instagram Live comments referring to Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar. And we also have our number one fan, Lockie Everett, giving a shout out to West superstar Katie Jones for adapting to a new conference. Absolutely deserves the chocolates there. It looks like I just love the way she plays, but perhaps a story for another time. And that time is now. We did the headlines of the rounds. I forgot to put the title up, but now it is time for the ESCOT game of the week for round 2. This week, we decided to review the game between the Newcastle Falcons and the Albury-Wodonga Bandits women. This was a game played on the Sunday, and it was both Newcastle and Albury's second game for the round. As previously mentioned, Newcastle travelled to play the Central Coast away on the Saturday, and Albury played Maitland in that barn burner on the Saturday as well. So I think that the fact that this was the second game of the weekend for these teams so early in the season played a part in the overall result and performance of this game. But tell me, Lockie, what are your overall impressions for this game so far?
I think you're 100% right about it being the fact that it was the second game of the week and what happened on the Saturday as well. That Albury-Wodonga had to drag themselves back into the game, whereas Newcastle had it pretty cruisy. I mean, Munga still played 29 minutes on the Saturday, but 29 minutes is probably actually kind of low by Nicole Munga's standards in NBL 1 East. And so they were able to get some, at least a little bit of fourth quarter rest in the legs of the Stars. Stars that include Meg Jefferson, who I thought, despite being only the second leading scorer for Newcastle, I thought that her presence on court was just an absolute game changer. She was beating Albury down court like it was gout in an age group race. She was just in the front court miles before any of the Albury front court players were. And I think that whilst all the accolades should go to Munga for an absolutely electric game, Jefferson was absolutely brilliant. And I think those two together just are going to continue to be one of the most dangerous combinations on the court. And then they have good support pieces going around them as well. I thought by the end, Albury-Wodonga did. Once it started slipping, it didn't look like one of those games where they were going to be able to reel it back and maybe it goes out, reel it back, maybe it goes out. It did kind of look like the elastic band was destined to snap. And it did. But I think overall, and this is kind of surprising to hear about Albury Wodonga, but I think Newcastle played the better team basketball throughout the game. I think that's pretty much what it came down to. I know Munga is very much the focal point, but I still think that, yeah, Newcastle played the better team game throughout the 40 minutes.
And to be fair to Munga, she was 3 assists shy of a triple-double. She had 7 assists and also 3 steals. So sure, she had 40 points, but she did shoot at 71%.
Yes.
So it wasn't like she was just throwing absolutely everything at the ring and just seeing what stuck. Her shot selection was still great. Her accuracy was obviously great. I was actually surprised by how many how many attempts she was allowed from the 2-point range. So she shot 17 from 24 overall. 20 of those 24 shots were from the 2-point range, which I was kind of surprised at. I was hoping that Albury were going to be able to make sure she was at all times, as you need to do, and just be able to limit her touches or at least make it a little bit more difficult for Munga to get some easy shots. But she opened the game with pretty much a classic Munga move, coming off a curl cut, 1 bounce, pull up at the elbow, and she hit 2 of them back to back. And then at the other end, unfortunately, Albury were just, I think it was honestly a combination of fatigue and those bouncy rings on court 1 at Broadmeadow Stadium that you have to have a certain finesse and a certain touch to sometimes shoot in those rings. But they got really, really good looks themselves, like a lot of shots under the basket for Bryn. Katie Jones was able to get to the rack as well, but just popping out, bouncing out, rimming out. And I think when you're playing a top team and you're already fatigued and you put so much into winning the game before, mentally, if that starts to happen at the start of the game, it's going to start to chip away at you. And I think that was a bit of a case for Albury. But yeah, Munga, 40, 15, 7, and 30. I totally agree. Great team basketball from Newcastle. Everyone just beautifully in their floor spots. Isn't it nice to see Meg Jefferson playing in a system that actually values her talents as a 5-man?
That was
so good. We've seen her like struggle in different ways in the last 2 seasons in the East to establish herself and get comfortable, and now this is what can happen.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yes. Yeah, when I watched Newcastle, it became more apparent that perhaps how she's been utilized in the past, and maybe it's been necessity because she's been one out in her position in the roster, that she hasn't been utilized perhaps in the way that most accentuates her strengths. But in this Newcastle team, it obviously does. I mean, I mentioned her ability to get down floor. She got some good opportunities there. But yeah, I just think she's thriving anyone would thrive having a star of the league take some of the pressure off you. But I just think she's thriving in that role as maybe like kind of a rear gunner for Munga. But I mean, you mentioned earlier Katie Jones, just taking to the east like a duck to water. And I think Newcastle, especially in the first quarter, made an absolute point of making sure she didn't get on a run early. Because the first 3 times she took it to the rack, they were swarming on her. I was unsure how Newcastle didn't commit a foul on one of those drives, because they were just in there almost ripping the ball away, just preventing Katie from getting anything early. I mean, it was 8-1 after 4 minutes.
Yeah, no, I noticed that as well. I think the defensive scout and execution from Newcastle was really great, straight from the tip-off. I also noted that they were able to double a lot of some handoffs to focus on making life difficult for Katie and for Riley. I mean, Katie didn't have a lot of room to penetrate as comfortably as she did against Maitland, and Riley didn't have as much time and space to be able to catch and shoot in the same way that she's been able to do. So Newcastle did a really great job of making life difficult for them both. But having said that, what I really liked from Albury is that once they figured out that that's probably not going to work as well as it did the game before, they did change up their half-court offense quite a bit to take the pressure off the likes of Riley and Katie. So they started to move the ball a lot more, spread the floor. That kind of gave Katie and Riley some other secondary opportunities to score rather than making it the first option in their half-court offense. So I really liked how they adapted to that, and I did notice that then they were starting to look inside to Bryn a little bit more often and probably started to chip away at that early 7-point deficit.
I think once they got Bryn involved a lot more inside, that was just, those were the times throughout the game when they looked better. And I noted later in the game as well, I think there was one post-up Mahadi had as well that it didn't finish, but it looked a lot better when they actually started getting the ball inside and then forcing Newcastle to almost make a decision, on defense. But I mean, if we move then to the second quarter, and I think this is something we're not going to see at all the rest of the season. And there was a short time when Munger and Jefferson were both off. It wasn't very long, but Albury Wodonga looked like an absolute different team. And I don't think, if we see Munger and Jefferson off together again the rest of the season, it's going to be because Newcastle are up by 30 in the fourth quarter. That was when Katie Jones was able to really start finding momentum. It probably hurt Newcastle more on the defensive end than the offensive end, which I found a little bit, maybe not surprising, but intriguing, considering those players combined for 59 of 90 points. And I think Munger had 30 when Newcastle had 50. So she was doing it definitely in the front end, but I just that little period, and I was hoping, and I think Albury kind of did go on with it a little bit at the offensive end, even once the two stars started coming back on, but those two just were able to just put points up at the other end.
Yeah, I think you're right. Munger and Jefferson off at the same time, maybe a time to experiment a little bit, but credit to Albury for exploiting that as quickly as they did. And Albury actually winning the second quarter 23-17. So that brought us back into a 1-point ball game by halftime. So that was quite impressive. I did like, though, that in the second quarter, I did notice the Albury's defensive transition did start to improve, because at the start of the game, that's when I got a sense of like, oh, they're still really tired, because people weren't running back as quickly as they normally would, or with as much intent as they normally would. People weren't getting out to shots. Like, I think there was a young player from Newcastle who had a corner three in the third quarter, or maybe it was it was in the third quarter, right kind of near the Albury bench. And whoever was guarding her was just kind of like, oh yeah, walking out, whatever.
Willsmore. It was Willsmore, number 8.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was Willsmore in the corner, and then she just nailed it. And I was like, oh, you're gonna want to hustle on that. You can't take anyone for granted. No. But overall, I think that, I mentioned the change in offense for Albury. The other big thing that I noticed for Albury was that no one was crashing the offensive glass for the majority of the game. It didn't feel like they were putting as much pressure on the O boards. And having a look at the statistics, they still had 10 offensive rebounds throughout the game. Emma Mahadi having 3 of her total 7 rebounds for the game. But just didn't feel like there was that same sense of urgency from Albury compared to the game before against Maitland. And Newcastle probably weren't as intense as I've seen them play, but I just felt like they still looked a little bit more relaxed and comfortable compared to Albury. Albury just looked like they needed some Coke bottles at halftime or something. Something just to pep them up a bit.
I I did notice that, but I think I didn't. It didn't seem as egregious because Newcastle weren't exactly getting a second chance on every look themselves. I mean, no, they weren't crashing, but it didn't. Yeah, it didn't feel as bad, but definitely still something to take away from the game.
And I think just to add to what you mentioned about, Newcastle Falcons only had 13 offensive rebounds themselves. Certainly could have been a lot higher with the likes of Jefferson and Munga under the basket. But again, it was Emma Mahadi that did a really outstanding job of boxing both of them out as best as she can. Full body, her arms were in full flight. There was no kind of holding or grabbing. It was just absolute textbook display of how well you can box out. I think she was a little bit of the unsung hero in this game because she was really consistent with her defense in the back end of the game, her boxing out. All weekend, she was in the perfect spots. Like even in that game against Maitland, some of the offensive transition from Albury with having Jones, Lutfer and Mahadi just in the right spots in transition, bang, 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 transition threes. It was like beautiful to watch. I think they went away from that a little bit this game, but Mahadi was very consistent with both ends of the floor. And I think at the times when, say, Riley and Katie weren't getting as many looks as they were used to, Bryn was missing a lot of bunnies under the basket, I would have liked to have seen more offensive opportunities or plays run for Mahadi to be a bit more of a scoring threat. She only put up 3 shots the whole game. And she was 2 from 3. So yeah, I don't know. It just could have been a bit of an opportunity to get her a little bit more involved in the offensive end. What do you think?
I 100% agree. I mean, Emma Mahadi is a player who's played at so many different levels. Like she's played for Albury Wodonga in South when they were a struggling team, and she was, a focal point. She's played for Bendigo in South or Siebel or both. She's played WNBL. So, she's the kind of player who can go and do that dirty work when it's required. And, she had 4, 7, and 2 and was just doing everything right. But I think she also has the skill set to have a bit more run for her when things perhaps aren't going right. It's probably not something opposition's coaches or players are really going to scout for or expect a play run for Mahadi. And, maybe you catch a defense out just still gravitating to, a Lutfer or a Jones on the perimeter and just maybe you get her a matchup she likes. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. Still, it's just something worth having a try of.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a couple of plays run to provide Mahadi a mismatch opportunity against someone like a Brennan or one of the younger bench players from Newcastle, because all the focus was already on Katie and Riley and perhaps even Bryn on the under the basket. They're always going to be taken care of. But it's just those couple of other little players that someone like Mahadi might be able to exploit and give her team the edge in the end. But yeah, thought she was great. I don't think I have many more notes for Newcastle. They got a bit slower on their half court D when guarding the dribble penetration in the back end of the game. But again, that's kind of that's probably just fatigue. And just on Emma Mahadi, we do have a comment on Instagram Live that Mahadi should shoot at least 5 to 8 shots per game. I'm going to say she could be someone to shoot 10 to 12.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, I would say, 8 would be the low bound for me, not the upper bound.
Yeah, we can be a little bit more generous with Emma Mahadi's shot intake or outtake. Output.
Yes.
But when I was looking at some of the more finer stats of this game, traditionally looking at things like points in the paint, Newcastle won 50 to 36. They also won the second chance points with 16 to 2. I thought that was a pretty interesting stat. Team assists were reasonably close, 19 to 13, again in favor of Newcastle. But there's one stat that really stands out to me, Lockie. One stat that I always come back to.
Is it free throw percentage?
Oh my goodness me. Free throw percentage. This was such a surprise, especially for Albury, who have been shooting really well, pretty well all weekend. 50% from the 2-point range against Newcastle, 26% rounded up from the 3-point range, which certainly wasn't their best performance given the first 2 games of the season. But look, those rings are unforgiving. And they were playing against a very talented Newcastle team on the defensive end. So we'll give them that. But free throws, goodness me. They had 22 free throw opportunities compared to Newcastle's 8. So it was Newcastle shot 6 from 8. Albury shot 10 from 22 from the free throw line, which is 46%. Lockie, that's 12 missed points in a game that you lose by 18.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they shoot 75% like Newcastle did, it doesn't bring back the entire deficit. But I say this a lot about missed free throws, is that a lot of the time it's not enough to bring back the entire deficit, but it's enough to change the situation of a game enough that in the latter stages, you're still a chance. What if, instead of trailing by, 12 with 5 minutes to go, you're trailing by 6 with 5 minutes to go or something like that. It's easy to do the maths and say, oh, they missed 12 free throws, but they lost by 18. They wouldn't have won anyway. Well, I don't subscribe to that theory. I think that, if you're scoring, you're getting closer, and then, it changes the way, maybe Newcastle can't burn as much clock in latter possessions because they can't just, use the clock, have the clock on their side kind of thing. So, 12 missed free throws, even if you say they get 17 or 18 of 22, that's still getting them close enough to have a red hot crack down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So they were the main statistics that stood out to me. Did you find anything different or even more interesting?
Well, you mentioned the 8 of 31 from 3-point range for Albury Wodonga. And I mean, Newcastle's 8 of 26 wasn't too crash hot. Not Captain KK's best day shooting. I think she had 2 of 10. But yeah, 3-point range, Riley up for 2 of 12. But I think there was a period in the third quarter, Albury Wodonga were up 48-44. And then Newcastle went on a bit of a run. And there was just a brief period in the middle of the third quarter where Albury Wodonga were almost jacking up threes early in the shot clock. Like they were trying to get back 8 points in a minute. And I dare say that affected their 3-point percentage, but they just weren't good looks. You've got 17, 18 on the shot clock. You just go down there and fire one away off balance or with someone in your face or just without even attempting to move the ball around the perimeter or get it into the paint beforehand. It's just, and I think, probably it affected their 3-point percentage, but I think it's probably the shot choice. There's not a stat for that. There's not a stat for that, but the quality of look was not good.
Yeah, and it would be too much of a subjective stat to keep as well if we kept a stat like that. But I think you're right. In the same vein that not necessarily making more free throws is going to win you the game, but certainly change your situation. I think when taking 3-pointers as well, affecting the overall shot percentage aside, it also disrupts the flow of the game, your flow of your offense, and I think probably adds to a little bit of that pressure when you shoot, probably not making the best decisions from the free throw line. I think sometimes as well, like there was probably in the last couple of games, Albury were able to take those shots and they were going in, so it kind of quickly lulled them into that false sense of security of like, that's okay, we'll just shoot our way out of it. But it didn't work. Didn't work this time, and it's not going to work all the time. So we've got to have a bit of a plan B.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, Albury Wodonga just those players in general will be able to shoot you out of a lot of situations. But Evidently not on Sunday.
And so my final thoughts for this game, it was still quite entertaining, especially given that Albury had a wobbly start and kind of had to pull themselves together to fight the fatigue and the wobbly rings and the high caliber opposition of the Newcastle Falcons. So we still had a lot of lead changes. It wasn't Newcastle completely dominating the game. They were equally as challenged throughout the game at times. But I do think for both teams, and particularly Albury, fatigue unfortunately did play a factor. But full credit has to go to the Newcastle Falcons for topping off that win. Beautiful team basketball at both ends of the court, looking like they're having a great time as well playing with each other. Like, it's also really nice to see Meg Jefferson play where she looks like she's enjoying it again. But just topped off with the masterclass of Nicole Munger. 40 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and a block, shooting at 71% overall. I mean, round of applause for that team. Absolutely brilliant performance and really showing why they're still a favourite to win the women's competition. But still, Albury, lots of promising signs, lots of great ways to help change the outcome of their game by changing their offense up very quickly. And perhaps there's room for other people playing different roles in this team. But yeah, I still think this Albury team will make top 8.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you go 1-1. I mean, you go 1-1 on the distance double after having to drag yourself back into it on Saturday. I know Albury Wodonga, their standards would have been, 2-0 every double header. They've got standard to maintain. But I mean, you come away from distance double with 1-1, and you lost to the defending champions, who are still a very, very good team led by a player who is going to be once again among the favourites for MVP. They're still right on track.
Oh, and definitely.
I would suggest everyone go and look at Munger's shot chart. It's just a showcase of what happens if you beat a defender, look at the second line, decide, no, I don't want any of that. I'll just shoot a mid-ranger.
Yeah, bring back the mid-range game. The mid-range game and the back to the basket post game is not dead.
Squin hates analytics, confirmed.
Yeah. Predictable, yes. But yeah, Munger is just, I mean, especially in the last couple of years, it's been really great to see how much Munger has improved from the 3-point line as well. I remember in her debut WNBL season, certainly there was room for improvement, but now she is a knockdown shooter from the arc as well. Not needing it on this occasion because, as you said, her shot chart does look like both butt ends of the key has a case of the measles on the NBL One website. But yeah, outstanding performance. And I just want to have a quick look at the ladder for the women. Despite the loss, Albury are sitting at 6, and that's purely because of for and against points and because obviously not everyone's played each other. Above them at the moment are Newcastle, North, Hornsby, Hills, Manly, and Albury at 6. And of that 6 that I mentioned, I'm confident that Albury will – I'm going to take that back now. I'm confident that Manly will be either top 4 or top 5. Easy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Newcastle, North, Manly, Albury Wodonga, I think most people would have them all penned in the top 8 and at least penciled in the top 4, at least 3 of them.
Now, this is a great question we've got on Instagram. Do you think Newey is weaker without Alyssa Brett? What do you think?
I don't know that it's... I mean, I don't know that any direct replacement has shown so far, any potential direct replacement so far has shown that they're on Alyssa Brett's level. But I don't know that they're a weaker team with the complete roster they've put together.
Yeah, I agree. It's, I mean, Alyssa Brett certainly brought a lot of athleticism and length and expertise on defensive end. Probably didn't shoot her absolute best last season, but really came good at the back end of the season once she got, used to playing in the East after a little while. But yeah, they've made some great new signings. I'm hoping that Susie Walmsley starts to get a little bit more court time. She only played 17 minutes against the Bandits, and we know what she is capable of. But it doesn't show any signs so far that they're missing Alyssa Brett or they're missing a piece based on how well they've played as a team so far. So,
and I think
I wouldn't say that.
They have the highly underrated Claudia Waihape-Andrews, who's a defensive menace. And so sometimes when you say defensive menace, people start thinking, oh, does that mean it's 5v4 at the offensive end? Because that's all she provides. It's like, no. She can get involved in the offense as well.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, everyone is very clear with their roles in each of these teams, which I really like to see. Everyone sticking to their roles and not really deviating away from that, which I think is why both teams were able to showcase such great team basketball over the whole weekend. We love to see it, especially in the women's game.
Yes, and you know what? If I'm Albury Wodonga, you know what I'm also going to take away from this game is how psyched Newcastle were when that final siren went. They were legitimately hyped. Munga was like up and hugging Kate Kingham after the game, like as the siren sounded. They were psyched to get that win. And if a team is that psyched to beat you in week 2, you take that away and say, all right, they were that hyped to beat us. All right, we're still pretty good. We're still hunted.
Yeah, that's a massive compliment. And I think also it shows that Newcastle as a team don't take anything for granted. They're not coming in cocky as the reigning champions, and they're still valuing each game and respecting all levels of competition that they come across. So that's a really, really nice point to make there, Lockie. Now, just before we've got an interview coming up in just about 15 minutes. And just before we do that, we've got time now to highlight our performances of the week. Now, listen, working title for this segment of our show is Good Eggs. Who are the good eggs of round 2? And for those that need it spelled out, ESCOT game is shortened to EGG, which spells eggs. So why not use that to our advantage? The good eggs of round 2. Lockie, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, well, I just want to preface this. This segment isn't just about picking a player of the week. It's about picking a performance that we feel worthy of highlight. And sometimes this might be game of the week. Like when LJ dropped 50 last year. Okay, that would have been a good egg performance regardless. But I went with sticking with the Albury Wodonga theme of the evening. I went with one of their men's imports, Aaron Freeman, because you're the import. Your team is staring down 0-3 if you lose to Newcastle, and this Albury Wodonga team expects to be in playoffs. And when you're the import, there's a little bit more pressure on your shoulders. And he went out and got it done. He had 21 and 11, 4 steals, shot 61.5% from the field. And they got up 77-72 in a game that was tied after 3 quarters. And they went up early in the first half. Newcastle brought it back. And so that's why he is my good egg of the week, with a secondary shout out to his running mate, Emmanuel Allen, who actually put up some points late to help get them over the line. So both the imports chipping in, and their other new addition, Matt Gray, was actually their top scorer. But yes, Aaron Freeman, men's good egg.
Very good. And for the women's good egg this week, I would give a special shout out to Carly McAllister from the Canberra Nationals, who is already averaging a very high double-double. Can I say NBL 1 East debut, because she technically hasn't played in East before, even though she's originally from Canberra, I guess. I can say that. But just finding her feet beautifully in the Canberra National squad, obviously an integral piece of their team and helping them find early success in this 2025 season. But it is hard to go past Nicole Munga as this week's good egg, not only for her performances for both games, but the one thing that really kind of put Munga over the line for me, only for this weekend, was just how she was able to rally her teammates when they were down in that Albury-Wodonga game. So very early on, Kate Kingham was taking a lot of great shots, and shots that lots of the time she would make, but unfortunately, it just wasn't her game today. And you could see Munga going over to her during a free throw and just trying to refocus her and help her regulate her emotions and keep her positive to keep her head in this game. And that's the extra mile stuff that you kind of hope from someone like Munga or the captain of a team. And it's just little things like that for me certify her as a good egg.
And for Kate Kingham, who is the captain of Newcastle Falcons, I mean, who does the captain turn to when they're not having the best day? Guy, the captain's a leader, but still human. Sometimes the captain needs a pat on the back as well. And that's where you get a player like Munga, who is also such a great leader. You recognize that, captain needs some revving up too. Captain needs to help through it, and just love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And that is our good eggs of the week. If you feel like you had your own personal good eggs of the week, and you'd even like to give one of your teammates a shout out, you can send us a DM via Instagram at eScottGame. We are still waiting for the official press release about Jeff Gerlach's $6 million max deal at the Sutherland Sharks that we heard about through our DMs. But if you've got something of similar nature that you want to hype up your teammates or give them a shout out, or can tell us why you think they're a good egg, then please send us a message on Instagram. But Lockie, we have about 9 minutes before our very special guest jumps on. So let's take time now to look at round 3 and start having a guess at what our eScott game of the week is going to be before the official KO Freebies game is announced. Now, I'm looking down, and straight away to my mind is, because we're going to be reviewing a men's game next episode, first one that sticks out to me is the Central Coast Crusaders and the North Bears, because the Central Coast Crusaders men are off to a really hot start with this new squad. However, we have already reviewed a game by the North Bears, so perhaps not that one. Is there anything that's maybe sticking out to you initially in the men's competition?
Well, I also thought Crusaders, but I thought... Crusaders. Yeah, so you said Crusaders North. Well, I was looking a day earlier at Crusaders Comets.
Very good. Yeah, I think that could be a really, really good matchup, actually. Both teams are playing really well so far. Both teams under brand new coaches. Comets men last season, thankfully, improving a lot as the season continued, because otherwise it was looking pretty dire for them at the start. Crusaders men probably underperforming perhaps the last 2 seasons, but coming around good so far in 2025. I like that one. I like that one as a possibility for our game of the week. What do you think about Albury-Wodonga Bandits men and Manly Warringah men at Albury?
Well, if the match I just mentioned had finished the other way around, with Newcastle winning and Albury were 0-3, it would be a very different story. But both teams that would, I think, expect to be 2-1 rather than 1-2 at this stage. I don't think any team would expect to be below 500 at any point. And the way it's shaking out could be an early one to bank for your tiebreakers as well. Not sure Manly, Warringah, at least in their 2 losses, haven't had all their big names fire at once. And I think that's been the main thing that I've gleaned from at least their 2 losses. They get everyone humming along, and then I think they can be back up where they were last year. But And that's why I think going into Albury-Wodonga, into the hideout, we know that the crowd is always crazy there. If Manly Warringah can do it down there, it will just be such a massive boost to their confidence. I think they'll be straight back on track. Whereas Albury-Wodonga just need to use that home crowd and build on getting that tight win, building on that tight win they had against Newcastle last weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely agree. Hopefully that Albury can use that momentum from their first win against Newcastle and take that home. But yeah, I don't think Manly are going to be very keen on having 2 losses in a row. So I think that's going to be super competitive down in the hideout. But yeah, for me, I think it is a toss-up between the Central Coast Crusaders and Sydney Comets and the game we just mentioned in Albury. But to be fair, we've been pretty Albury heavy already. I mean, we have spoken about the women's team already in this episode. So perhaps we will preview next episode that Crusaders men's Sydney Comets game at Breakers Indoor Sports Stadium. Shall we lock it in?
Lock it in.
Lock it in. All right. Let's see if I've got a sound effect for that. No. Oh, a very, there we go. Very light swish sound. That was almost the 5 of 8 free throws that Newcastle women made against Albury. But yeah, lock it in. Next episode, we will be reviewing the Central Coast Crusaders men versus the Sydney Comets at Breakers Indoor Sports Stadium, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. A reminder now that daylight saving has ended. Oh my gosh, seriously. And it takes me like 12 months to remember that there is a difference in time. And now it's changed again. And I have to go back to remembering that we're on the same time. It's too much. 1 hour that causes too much grief. And before our guest jumps on, have you got did you purposely wear your World Cup jumper today, or was that a coincidence?
No, it was just on the couch and I was cold. But it's the 2022 Women's Basketball World Cup hoodie. Yes, which we were both at together in the final.
Yes, we were. We've got the selfie to prove it. We
Yes.
were at the World Cup. We were in the World Cup. We were around the World Cup. We were the World Cup that year. I don't think we could have participated any more in that particular event.
No. I went to 2 World Cups that week because the Cycling World Championships were on in Wollongong the same week.
That's right. They were too. Yeah. Were they 2 very different sporting atmospheres and sporting kind of crowds and niches?
Yes. Well, I mean, one's in the open air alongside the road in the park at Wollongong, and one's in a 15,000 seat stadium or 20,000 seat stadium that, you had half the crowd screaming Aussie, 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 oi, 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 and the other half of the crowd just screaming China over and over at about 140 decibels a piece.
Yeah, it's I think at the Basketball World Cup, the semi-final between China and Australia, I don't think I will ever experience that volume of people and volume of noise chanting in unison ever again in my life. Like, that was like a wall of sound. They talk about the wall of sound, that was invented in the 60s in music production, but this was the wall of sound at that game. It was incredible.
It was. Yes, it was very, very good to be at.
And the 2026 Women's Basketball World Cup isn't too far away. It's only 18 months away. It's going to be held in Berlin next year. I don't know if you're planning to go, Lockie, but me and a few others are certainly planning so far ahead of to attend the World Cup that we've already picked what Airbnb we'd like to book.
No, sorry. I'm going to the Winter Olympics in February. And with the exchange rate as it is, there is no way I'm doing 2 trips to Europe in a year.
All right, so perfect timing so our listeners don't have to hear us gossiping and babbling on about the days of old any longer. It's time for us to introduce our very special guest today. And listeners, you're going to have a real treat, because not only will you get a break from hearing Lockie and I talk, you're going to get absolute nuggets of gold from this guest today. Our guest started in country Victoria and has since travelled across Australia and the world with their various roles in coaching. They have over 25 years experience coaching various levels of women's basketball, from state programs to WNBL to Junior World Cup tournaments. Their accolades include the WNBL Coach of the Year award in 2002/2003 with the Townsville Fire, and a silver medal at the Under-19 Women's World Cup, plus many more accolades that we could name. Our guest was also a commentator at the NBL One Nationals in 2024, bringing tremendous insight and humor to the broadcast. Not to be confused with a published food writer or an academic from the University of Tasmania, our very special guest today is the head coach of the COE Women's Program. It's David Herbert. Hello, Herbie. How are you?
Good. How are you? I've got to figure out a way to throw a smoke bomb here. If Hamish is listening out there, I think I kept throwing them at the national finals. I kept finding a way to disappear. So might do that mid-podcast now.
You are the certified king of smoke bombs. Just for context, we would often be hanging out late at night after we'd have a great day commentating, and then Herbie would say, "Oh, look, I'm just going to go to the bathroom," and just never come back, and he would just poof, and he was gone. Yes. It was definitely a skill that we had the pleasure of seeing in the flesh, Herbie.
I'm actually down in Melbourne,
yeah.
So I'm down in Melbourne right now. It's the Opals camp, and we've had day 2, and so far, I think Sandy's putting in a new style of play with the Opals, and it's a faster, more dynamic style, and it's exciting. I think it could see a new wave coming through junior ranks and everything like that. I think the style that she's trying to adapt is the modern day game, more positionless, and I've been catching up with all the different language and new terminologies and things like that. And part of me being here is basically being in a position there where I can attack what the Opals are running and implement that at the COE.
That sounds like a great idea. So you're getting it straight from the top, and then you can develop the youth. So by the time it's their turn to put on the Opals jersey, they're ready to go.
Yeah, especially the terminology. There's different terms that are cracked back and a few things like that today. I'm like, hey, what does that mean? And so it's good. So I guess my education is important to not only help the COE, but then filter that down through the pathway. We do a lot of visits interstate, and it's an opportunity to help educate coaches throughout the country. And I guess feeding down from Sandy, that's probably one of the best ways to do it.
I thought crackback was just what you call your lower back pain after you've turned 30.
Yeah, I think it's also pain after standing up for 4 hours on court today. So that was what I was thinking. But no, it was great experience. Both Mel Downer and I are here. Mel is the assistant coach at the COE, and we've worked alongside the coaches and been watching video. It's full on. It's you go to these things and it's just an educational experience. So and what better person to learn from than to Sandy, and then you have Gori and Cheryl Chambers and Renee and Shannon Seabohm. It's really good company, and the girls will be, I guess, seeing some new things at the COE, which will be great.
Very good. Can you give us any insight on what's the vibe like at Opals Camp today? We've seen some footage on our social media. It looks like a lot of smiles, a lot of physical testing, and they've put up a reel of the Opals doing the yo-yo, which, listen, I was triggered by it. I'm not too sure whose idea it was to put up the yo-yo, because that took me back to my ITC days when we used to do the beep test, and I'm still haunted by that sound.
The actual yo-yo is great. The level that the players push them to is something else. Like we were all predicting who'd win and who wouldn't and all that type of thing. And it was interesting. It shows how committed the players were. They pushed themselves beyond. And that's been the theme of the camp. I think the intensity's been high, the enthusiasm, we had team meeting with various stakeholders and different people explaining the process and what the sisterhood means and everything like that. And it's been a joy to be around and listen. And the experience for me has been fantastic.
That sounds awesome. And you've got some Opals on debut as well with Izzy Bourne, I see, is in the squad. And then you've got some veterans like Sammy Whitcomb as well. What's the mix like between the old and the new?
Yeah, Sammy's been a leader the whole way through. Like she's the biggest talker on court. But some of those younger players, like you mentioned, Isabel Bourne, are really impressive. Like I think the depth of talent coming through, even down to the COE, is very exciting. There's some really good athletes coming through. And over the next few years, I guess the transition of some of those older players, there's going to be some players ready to step in there when they're called upon, which is great.
Now, Lockie, I'm going to head over to you. Would you like to get us kicked off with our regular questions?
I certainly would, because, well, Quinn, you kind of half gave it away that Herbie started in country Victoria, but Herbie, how and where did your basketball coaching journey begin?
It's an interesting, probably in my coaching, I started playing, obviously. I read a newspaper ad when I was 9 or 10 and raced in and told my mum and dad I wanted to play basketball, and that's where it started. So I'm from a country town called Morwell, and there's a history of some coaches coming through there, the likes of Marty Hansen, who's well known throughout the country, and we had one hell of a program there for a long time. Unfortunately, it's dropped away, but I've been recently went back there and did a clinic, and it's starting to get going again. The likes of Andrew Winnell and his wife are doing a tremendous job. It's starting to pick up, and it's right next to Traralgon, the home of Jade Melbourne and Jack White. So it's a bit overshadowed that way, but it's nice to see it's developing again, and there's numbers playing basketball down there. From Morwell, obviously, I went and was an assistant coach with the Dandenong Rangers. From there, I was recruited to the Queensland Academy of Sport in Townsville, and then I was lucky enough to secure a job with the Townsville Fire, and I was the inaugural coach. It was quite an experience, being 26 years of age. Some of the players are actually older than me at that particular stage, and I often talk about not being ready. And I spent 6 years there as the head coach. We made the preliminary final in the second year, but there was things and worldly experiences and probably, I guess, a maturity level in terms of dealing with some challenging situations that I probably wasn't ready for. And I know I wasn't ready for. So to go through them was a great experience. And I know how to handle those situations a lot better now. But at the time, I guess my age at that particular moment, I didn't have that worldly experience. So I guess I'm pleased I went through it. I probably you climb to the top very quickly and you fall to the bottom very quickly as well. And that's an experience that I've had. And it's been a matter of, I guess, staying motivated and learning the game and trying to educate myself in the game every day. And there's times where that's dropped away, but right at the moment, I'm probably as keen as ever to learn as much as I can. And part of me being learning from Sandy, it just gets the mind racing. And how can I implement that with the COE kids?
So when you, as an inaugural coach, were you involved in crafting the initial roster?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had obviously my experience in coaching Victoria Country State teams. I was able to attract some players to come and play, and the first year was challenging. I think we won 3 games, but we lost 9 by under a point or 2. And from there, I guess some changes were made, personnel brought in, and I would say a team that probably shouldn't have been in the finals was actually we made it. Not only did we make it, we had a 16-point lead on Canberra at the Tuggeranong Stadium in front of a full house. Unfortunately, one Lauren Jackson decided to take over that game, which meant we ended up losing that on the buzzer. It's probably one of the better games I've ever been involved in. And from there, we went to the preliminary final in Townsville. Unfortunately, lost to Sydney, but the stage was set that program had been established and we were underway. And we pretty much had house crowds for 6 years, and it was an amazing experience. And I guess if I'd had have known a little bit more and worked a bit harder and just I suppose sought more knowledge at that particular time, I think I could have been more successful. Now I believe I have that knowledge. It's interesting now implementing it with a young group of players and trying to educate them the right way to turn into eventually professional basketballers.
Who were some of the people you were able to recruit at that time from Victoria for that inaugural season?
We had Natalie Porter was one of those. We had a band of local talent at that particular time, and the second year I managed to bring in Claudia Brassard, and not only did she make an impact as a player, she made an impact as a coach for Australia, and that's something I'm proud of. I went away with the 2019 World Cup team, and Claudia was on that staff with me. And there's a number of Kylie Galloway we brought back from America, and she was a high impact player. I brought Gina Stevens back out of retirement, and I think Gina was probably one of the most underrated players. If she hadn't have got chronic fatigue, I think she would have ended up in the WNBA. She was that talented. So. And Nika Kerr was another player at that time, and she had the ability to get under Lauren Jackson's skin. And both Natalie and Nika were two of the players that I think Lauren feared or hated playing against the most because they were physical. And I guess at that stage you had to beat that team to win. And we were successful in beating them a couple of times. Lauren went to the WNBA, came back, and there was nothing stopping her. She's the most phenomenal player, and at that time, I think everyone was really playing for a runner-up trophy. Lauren, Kristen Veal, and that group were so dominant.
Amazing. Lockie, you're welcome to continue with question 2 when you're ready.
So your coaching career has been primarily around women's basketball. Why do you prefer coaching women's basketball? I guess what drew you to it in the first place?
It's an interesting question. Like I started coaching boys, men, and did that for a number of years. And what happened was Russell Thomas, who's a coach for Vic Country at the time for under 16 girls, said to me, how about coming away and doing stats for me? And I wasn't even really coaching at that stage. I was just doing it as a bit of fun. And local club like Morwell, everyone chips in. So I was doing under 10s and 12s and different things like that. And Russell said, hey, come over and come to Tasmania, do some stats, sit on the end of the bench. And basically that's where it started. I guess I was thrown into the women's or the girls side of it. The following year, I was given an apprentice coach role to an assistant coach role to eventually a head coach role. And it was all to that women's side. And I guess I was labeled that way of being a women's coach. And maybe I think in some ways my personality, I'm not someone who's going to yell and rant and rave and carry on. I'm hopefully going to educate and nurture players and basically be there in that role. So I think in some respects my personality suits that. But I've always tinkered with the idea of going back coaching boys and men. So who knows what happens in the future.
I guess what are the primary differences between coaching women and men, not just as people, but as in styles of play?
I don't actually treat it differently. I think sometimes the women's game is a little bit more technical. There's a few more screens and a few things to get people open, where I guess the men rely on a little bit more athleticism. But in saying that, the women's game's changing. I watched the Opals today. It was fantastic. They're playing at a speed that is equivalent to the men's game easily. So I think that's where the COE is headed right now. We have 7 young players who've come in, and the athleticism and length, and it's going to surprise some teams in the BL1, particularly when we get our 2 big kids fit and ready to go. At the moment, we've had one with a bit of a back issue, and another one's not quite physically strong enough. And when they hit the floor, I think the NBL1, we already competed against Manly in week 1, where we were 14 down, got back to a point, and then lost by 15. last few minutes wasn't great, and then surprised Bankstown, I think, with length, athleticism, and so in saying that, I go back to your question. I probably sidetrack a little bit. I don't see there's that much difference. I think now coaching isn't about yelling and screaming and everything like that. It's about nurturing and developing players and doing the right thing as a coach and being a role model. So I don't see much difference at all, to be honest.
It's just like in Monsters Inc. when they used to generate power out of getting screams out of little kids, and then turned out that generating laughter actually got them more power, right? You're not going to get any kind of, you're not going to get more output from kind of yelling and screaming as a coach. But if you put in that time and development and nurturing, you're going to get so much more out of players. And I don't think people realize as well that as coaches, you can have impact on your players as them as a person as well as a player.
And that's part of what the COE is about. Like, you basically step into a parental role in some respects, a psychologist role. You name you're living with those kids 7 days a week a lot of the time, and you'll deal with emotional up and downs. You'll obviously, we have staff around us who are specialists, and they're great in the fields of psychology, everything like that. But as a coach, and you deal with so many different things that you don't expect at the COE, and you normally wouldn't as a coach. Like you'll have the splitting up with a boyfriend, for example, and things like that. And it's probably their first one ever, and those sort of things are, I guess, day-to-day challenges, and a lot of those are handballed to Mel Downer. But it's you do it's a lifestyle there, without a doubt, and helping those kids. Just recently, like one of the kids that graduated has gone out, and now, how do I get a working with children card? What's a tax file number and things like that? I'm from them, and they've left. So I guess trying to make kids well-rounded when they leave the COE is what we're about, and it takes time. It definitely does.
Probably the perfect segue to go into our next question. Just take us through roughly what an average day at the COE looks like. Or what's the daily routine for an average day for yourself at the COE?
Yeah, I'll mix it in with the athlete experience as well. But basically, it depends on what time we have individuals in the morning. There might be an early morning session that we're up early for, and that's usually with. So we have 2 grads at the moment who are basically graduating at the mid-year and going to college. That's Jay Crook and Amelia Dakic. So Mel and I will work with one of those players each in the morning, and what they do there is, so the grads they'll finish that, and then they'll go and work. So they'll do tours around the AIS and things like that. And I know a couple, they have babysitting jobs and things, and so that would be a start of a day. We check AMS, Athlete Management System. So if they're not compliant, we come down on them. So we've had additional bike sessions, and I guess early on we have to be hard with that because it's something that the Opals fill out. It's something that players, when they play college, everything else like that, the compliance areas are filling out AMS and RPE. So basically giving themselves a score on a session that we can calculate in terms of load management. The RPE, it's done like this. It's so Amelia and Jade would do their session. If it's a 60-minute session, they'll rate the session out of 10. It might be a 6. They times that by the amount of minutes, and that gives them a score. And across a week, we try to basically manage the load so we don't hurt them and they're injury free, and we don't get bone stress reactions and all sorts of things that are common in that age. And that's probably the biggest learning for me while I've been there, is actually learning to deal with that, because 7 new athletes this year, and I know I'm sidetracking again. I'll get back to the daily routine in a second, but tracking that load management is crucial, because if we push them too hard, like they do 2 sessions a day for 5 days in a row, they're going to break down. So back to the question. Sorry.
No, we love a sidetrack. Don't be sorry.
So after that, basically we normally have a meeting on Monday or a Friday, and that's as a whole staff, and we'll have a psychologist, our nutritionist, our residents, basically the people that look after resis, the kids after school and on weekends, etc. are there. Physio, doctor, basically everyone that makes up the holistic approach to the athlete. And what we do is it takes about an hour to get through, but we go through each athlete and we work where they're exactly at. And that allows us to plan for training that day. It allows us to plan for the remainder of the week. So with those 7 kids, for example, we might start at 3:45. We might have 2 kids doing one program. Then we have another group come in with 4 athletes that are doing another half an hour program, and they might overlap. Then we have another group come in who are the older kids, and they do another half an hour. And basically it becomes really hard to program, but you can see the results are really rewarding. Like we have our 2 big kids, Violet Johnson and Jemima Manshot at the moment. They're both highly restricted, but we've kept them doing 3 individuals a week. And to see them now running, jumping freely without pain is awesome. And I think Bonnie Diaz is a perfect example of that. She came in, and her name, we're mates. She had ankle issues, back issues, you name it. We spent 3 months building her. So while they spend a little bit less time off the floor, we're actually setting them up for the future. And if you saw Bonnie play in the WNBL this year, she was tough and gritty, and she wouldn't have been able to do that without all the background work. So that's kind of a shape of our training. Like we'll have 3 or 4 sessions going on within one session. So coaching wise, it's challenging because some can change direction, some can't, and things like that. But we're trying to build those kids. And one of the things when I felt when we first got to the COE, the kids were taken off the floor. Now we're keeping them on the floor as much as we possibly can. And that's a credit to the staff that are there and working. So after that session, they will generally go into recovery, and the AIS recovery is brilliant. So that is also mixed up with gym. So we may have a gym class either before or after training, depending on the layout of that particular day. So I'm very, very fortunate at the moment with our staff, like the way everyone's interacting and basically progressing these kids has really developed. And I'm so proud of the staff right now and the results we've had. I know there's a few kids sitting out of under 18 nationals right now who would be frustrated. Where basically we have some real potential opals in our group. It's our job to make sure we nurture them and get them ready. So Wednesday is a day off. Sunday is a day off. We give them a chance to grow. Wednesday, they also do a session of mindfulness and or some sports psychology work. So we cover a lot in a week. So the kids are told when they come in, we work for you. So we want you to book in meetings with the psychologist, with the nutritionist, with the physio, and basically we get them programmed, I guess, to chase those opportunities and really work at their holistic development.
We got a really great question on Instagram while we're streaming live at the moment. Just asking, how does the COE differ from the AIS, or is it similar?
We're part of, like, the COE is obviously the Basketball Australia program. That we're at the AIS. So we live on site. The kids stay on site. They're full time, and the SSN staff, our sports science and sports medicine group, are basically the AIS. They're the team at the AIS that we deal with, and we use their recovery facility. We use their courts. So we're the only full-time scholarship program at the AIS, but we're known as the COE. It used to be called the AIS program. It changed to become the Centre of Excellence. And I think that name, the Centre of Excellence, is a good one because it highlights what we're trying to do, we're trying to achieve. But we are part of the AIS as well. And we have a great partnership with them to try and deliver the best results we can. And I think the pleasing thing for me is seeing the likes of Monique Babongi and those kids come out of there and play in the WNBL. And we took a tour to America in December, and to see those kids play against the best high school kids states was something else. And they really proved how much improvement we'd made in that 12 months.
Yeah, I think perhaps the question may have been referring to the COE program and the AIS program that we kind of grew up with that used to have a team in the WNBL. But based on what you've already described, it sounds pretty similar, but perhaps better access to allied health like sports psychology and more dietetics and certainly more resources for recovery these days than compared to back in the old AIS days.
It actually, I think the resources were pretty amazing back when the AIS was fully running and everything like that. We're still running the same program, but obviously our scholarship numbers are 12. I'd love to have 15 or 16, and I say that openly to anyone because at times it's challenging. We have an injury. Unfortunately, we had an ACL this year. The young girl turned nowhere near anybody, and those sort of things happen. So as long as I guess we're not getting the bone stress injuries and things like that, we are doing the right thing, even though we had that ACL. What we've got to do is make sure we don't overload the kids, and that's done through the sports science department and the AIS. And the data they feed us is magic because basically we can basically take kids off the floor for, if they get to 3,500 load, for example, in a week, we might off. So part of it is educating them on producing RPE score, but we also use Catapult, and the Catapult data basically confirms or not whether the RPE score is right. So, but the AIS is a really important part of the program for sure.
And what are some of the, I guess, key attributes that you look for in a player to consider them, consider inviting them or providing a scholarship to the COE?
Well, I guess that's a very, very difficult one. Like there's so many variables in that. Like you go to a tournament and I think one of the things, because if you look at the Olympics, you look at the players that really, truly competed against America and those particular teams, the Alana Smiths and the Ezi Magabors stood out. They were able to compete with America. They were able to compete with all the European teams, etc. So that is a factor. There's definitely the size and length of players is something. And obviously Alana Smith, her younger sister, has joined us at the COE and had a double-double today for Tasmania against Vic Metro, which is exciting. And they're the type of athletes that we have to find. Again, sometimes not just about the length and size of the athlete, it's also about the competitiveness and the skill level. I think you can walk into a stadium and see tremendous athletes, but do they compete hard? Do they play as hard as they possibly can in every possession? Do they finish a game, and how do they react when they finish a game? Are they upset at losing? Do they shoot a little bit more? Do they turn up to training earlier? Do they finish last on the court? Those types of things are all things that we try and find out about. And that's challenging because in their home environments, we don't really get to see them other than national tournaments. We take a lot of feedback from the state directors of coaching or high performance managers, and that's where we form our decisions. Like we have 2 scholarships coming up mid-year that we have to fill at this point in time. So part of the job at the under-18 nationals this year, we'll be having a look at that and going through depth charts and trying to uncover, I suppose, the next Penny Taylor, Lauren Jackson, Belinda Snell, Christy Harrower, amongst it all. And it's not an exact science, I can tell you. There's times where you do get it wrong. There's times where you get it right. And I guess the experience over 25 years, I've had opportunities to get it right. I've also got it wrong. So I'm not saying perfect by any means. And that's one of the challenges of being in this role.
It's funny you mentioned competitiveness as a thing you look for, because funnily enough, I was actually sitting next to you at an under-20s tournament, and I'm assuming you were scouting for a World Cup, and you ticked Izzy Morgan's name, and I just saw it in the program, and I was like, yes. And I don't think I've met many players more competitive than Izzy Morgan. So I can see how that's definitely a big thing for you.
One of the things with Izzy Morgan was her personality and ability to make her teammates better as well. Like I saw something special in her, and she went away as our 12th man. And she was told that from day dot. She showed those displays, those leadership skills, etc. And I couldn't ask for a better person in that particular role. Like I when I was doing the gems each year, the second year, I put up a slide, and it was Isabel Morgan saying, "Hey, if you can make this team, if you have the relentless persistence, the work ethic, but also the ability to be a great teammate." And she did it. Ula Toga was another player in 2019 who filled that particular role. So I guess some advice I gave a young Jade Melbourne when she first went to an Opals camp was maybe wave the towel, cheer, high fives, be the first off the bench. Those types of things will help you cement a spot in a team. And Isabel Morgan was one of those. And she's had a great career at Davidson. I'm looking forward to her coming back to Australia and making an impact.
And I think referencing both Izzy Morgan and Jade Melbourne in that kind of theme there of being the towel waver, was it that under-19s tournament where you went away and won the silver medal? I think Izzy Morgan was part of that team, but then that was the same time where Jade Melbourne got the late call-up to go to Asia Cup in Jordan to replace Maddie Rochi. And I think one of the outstanding things feedback that Jade got from that tournament was just that, being able to get the late call-up at risk of doing two different types of sets of quarantine or whatever it was back then. And people just complimented her on how much energy and positivity and how active she was on the bench, despite going from one tournament to another and getting the late call-up. Yeah. So your advice obviously rubbed off on her in the right way, Herbie.
I think understanding the role that you have in a team is so important. Like if you're a young player, often kids, look at the portal right now in America. What an absolute joke that is right now. It's horrible. There's 1,200 kids in there, and there's no I guess, how can I say this? The loyalty to programs anymore. No loyalty to coaches. It's now coming down to the dollar. And I think that's one quality. Those two, you talk about Izzy and Jade. While Jade's now off earning millions, I'll say that. I'll make her listen to this tomorrow. She has worked hard for it and deserves it. Where I think that portal has just, in some ways, it's starting to destroy the American game and that loyalty piece for colleges. I really feel the coaches in that right now who are having to deal with it all.
Yeah, the portal, I think there's about 13 to 15 Australians in the portal the last time I properly read about it. And it just seems risky in a sense. But yeah, like you said, it just kind of shows different motivations or I guess different experiences and outcomes that athletes can gain now in the college system. But yeah, losing the loyalty, using the team chemistry and I think there's probably just as much to lose as there is to gain going into the transfer portal.
And you look at those younger kids right now in Australia, like a Sataya Fagan. She has every top-end school other than UConn chasing her. Like the decision she has to make now is it becomes a financial one as much as anything with Neil and everything like that. So there's so much more pressure and like there's so many opportunities now. Kids can go to high school, but I think Australia does it very well. I think the way we teach fundamentals, if you go to a number of those clubs in Sydney and Melbourne and everywhere throughout Australia, there's some fantastic coaches doing some fantastic work. And that's why the Australian kids are so highly regarded, because we bring them up the right way. We teach the game the right way. And I think that's something that we do very, very well in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you touched on it a little bit before as well about some of the, how you have to be also the number one support for a lot of these young athletes while you're at the COE. But are you able to tell us some of the parts of your role as head coach at the COE that some people wouldn't expect?
I think probably one of is the sports science, like the load management part. I think you basically look at each athlete and you're trying to make sure that you keep them safe. And I guess that area is crucial. If you overload them, there's risk of injury. So we had a very challenging calendar last year, and there's some similar things happening this year. So last year we were going double header into a GEMS camp, into a double header, into a series with China, to a double header. And we basically had to, it was survival mode at some stages where we had to back off what we were doing to make sure that the kids could get through it. And similar this year, we head to May, and or even our first 2 games were in the NBL 1. We went straight into a GEMS camp. Some of those kids went from GEMS camp to under 18s, and we have to, there's a different charter for us. While we want to win NBL 1 games, we also need to make sure that we're looking after these kids. So on our stats, you'll see in the first 2 games, we played kids around 20 minutes each. So there's probably a chance in the Manly game, maybe if this sub didn't happen or that sub didn't happen, and we kept the team on that had the flow at that time, we might have won that game. But while winning is important, equally important is keeping these kids healthy, because they're the next generation of Opals, and we've got to look after them. So people might look at the games we play and go, "Why is he subbing that player off? What's happening there?" And it's different. Like, we have to make sure, and that's a different role that probably people don't really realize. The other part is being on call all hours of the night. You'll have a kid get violently ill or have the flu or something like that. You're often the first point of call. So you do become that parent. You do become that person that they rely on and talk to, and some, like, you have discussions with the kids just about life and jobs and what they're looking to do in the future and those types of things. It's not like your everyday program where you're simply coaching. It's a lot more than that, and it is a 7-day a week job for sure.
Sitting at the dentist for hours on end with an athlete.
Monique Babongi. Yes. It was, not just once, I think it was 3 times. So
yeah, I didn't want to say her name, but you said it, so you're allowed to.
Yeah.
But you touched on the increased athleticism and the speed of the game, but are there any other real trends you're seeing and changes in trends in the women's game of late, particularly at the junior level?
I think not junior, but Opals today was positionless, and what we're trying to do is build some kids. Like you look at young Jemima, who played her first representative game for Australia, an exciting young athletic talent. We want to multi-skill her so she's not just a post player. We want to be in a situation where players who play the 3 spot can experience playing the 1. We want to go the other way also, and players in the 2-3 spot have the ability to post up. So trying to develop a positionless player that can do it all. And we're in that situation now where the 2 post kids that have just come in and a young Andy Smith are that athletic that we can actually do that with. That's so exciting right now. I think the 6'6", 6'5", 6'4" types. We've got 4. Let's just say we've got 4 kids now that can basically grab the ring. And one of those kids, Smith, dunked it in the warm up against Sierra Canyon. She dunked it twice, and the referee told her to stop doing it. I just slapped the referee. I think it's great. Young females getting up there, throwing it down. It certainly turned my head. I heard the ring and the crowd roar, and I turned around. It was Andy, who's very quiet. But I think seeing the Opals today, I think that's the way it'll trend. It'll be more running the floor, 5-out type style. You might post up, you might not, but more space to play in. More grenade type actions where the ball is dribbled at someone with a handoff, and that's normally one of your bigger players to a guard. Those types of things are going to come through the game. Sure, if you watch a bit of the college game in America, some of the women and the girls playing there, the athleticism is amazing. Like you're looking at players switching 1 through 4 or 1 through 5, and they're all athletic and can stay in front of anyone. And And I think that would probably be an ultimate challenge, I guess, an ultimate aim. But I also see a place for that small point guard. I think Australia's had some of the best, like Christy Harrower, obviously coaching here at the camp. There's definitely a place for that player, particularly in the women's game, not as much as in the men's.
And I mean, training players to be able to play more positions just gives them more opportunities down the line. I mean, you might be a 6'4" and you might be being the tallest in every team you play, but you could go to Europe and play alongside a 6'8" player, and suddenly you might be playing the 3 or the 4.
Young Andy Smith, the first couple of weeks, I want you shooting the 3. My coach says, don't do that. I'm like, I don't care what your coach says. She went to the under 18 nationals. One of the last drills that she'd done was she hit 8 out of 9 from behind the arc. So things like that that's what makes me feel great about my job. When you see little things like that start to take effect, and sometimes they're small things, other times they're bigger things. But when you see a player develop and they develop multi-positional work and they're able to defend someone smaller than them, someone bigger than them, it's quite rewarding to see.
Wow. And I'm still kind of hung up on the fact that the referee in America stopped Andy Smith from dunking anymore in the warm-up. And I bet you if that was a young men's game, no one would be getting told to be stopped dunking in the warm-up, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I was disappointed because I was so proud of her because she's very shy, and for her to get up and throw it down. But we might get her doing that in a couple of warm-ups in around the league, and if we can get her on a breakaway, the other one will be Jemima. When she gets going, she can basically get under the ring and jump and grab it. So when she gets going, I think. Like I said, I think the young group we have that have just come in are very, very exciting, very, very athletic, and I think as the season goes on, the NBL1 teams are going to be in for a bit of a shock, I think, as we progress.
And I'm spewing that I'm not commentating a COE game this year.
Okay. We have a lot of away and home games all year, home, away, on the one weekend. It's we challenging, but it'll hopefully toughen these kids up as well.
So Shane Lockyer could have been your one opportunity in your commentating career to commentate in a dunk in a female game.
Yeah, although who knows what might happen in the future.
This is true.
But yes, I think like that's exciting. Like if we can play a brand that's athletic, positionless, where these big kids are out switching point guards and containing the ball and things like that. It's going to be exciting to watch. It may not be pretty for a while. We're going to take a little while, but it's something to look forward to, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you've mentioned, you've got to see a myriad of talent over your coaching career, including the existing and current talent you have at a COE. But are there any athletes over your career that you remember just seeing for that first time and absolutely blew you away with their talent?
I'd have to actually say recently, not trying to put any pressure on her, but I heard about Jemima. I flew to Queensland within a week or two. She walked onto the floor and I said, I'll know in the first 5 minutes what I think. And within that first 5 minutes, I was like, wow, she's 6'6". She's got light feet. It actually reminds me a lot of Ezzy. I'm not trying to put pressure on the kid at all, but you see a generational talent like Ezzy, and then you see an athlete like Jemima. And to me, I think she could be quite special. Obviously, there's other young players like Olivia Ilichnovich. I watched her have that 44-point game in the under-16 finals of the national championships. She's got some toughness and some special things as well. I was very fortunate when I was young and coaching in Gippsland. I was taking the intensive training program, which you would have been in, Jacinta. But I had a group with a young Belinda Snell, and Belinda Snell, Desiree Glubitz, and Michelle Musselwhite, now Michelle Cozier, one of our referees. So those three players were something else. And for me, seeing them shoot a basketball, because they're three elite shooters, some of the three of the best. Learning from them and Gina Stevens, gave me a little bit of an eye to pick out what it takes to be a great shooter, and I learned so much from those particular players. And I saw Belinda Snell from about age 8, and from age 8 she was icing games. Like it'd be the final shot of an under 10 tournament for Mubu North was her team. And when it came down to the wire, 20-year-old Belinda Snell was the one making the big shot, and you could just tell from that point she was going to be something else. So I saw Lauren Jackson at Albury Cup. I obviously didn't coach her, but to see her as a gangly under 16 and then progress to be the player that she was, she's probably the most dominant and special player that I've ever seen. And like I said, we were playing for runners up a lot of the time because she was that damn good. So, yeah.
Wow, some real standouts of the WNBL and of the Opals as well. You know, Snelly taking her shooting prowess over to the London Olympics to hit that epic halfway shot to get it into overtime.
Yeah.
That still counts.
Yeah.
And I think she still holds the record for the most number of threes made in a WNBL game, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think she might have done that. I remember one weekend there was I was coaching, we had a girl hit 55, I think Belinda Snell hit 56, and someone else hit 53 in that one weekend. It was ridiculous. So there's been some amazing Australian female talent playing basketball, that's for sure. And it's been a joy, I guess, to be part of it and watch those players go on and really play a significant part. And now that next generation, the opportunity to see the Gems and be part of that for 6, 7, 8 years and see the Jade Melbournes now come on and be an absolute star. It's nice to see.
Because it's under 19 Women's World Cup time as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Renee Garlopp's coaching the team. They just had a recent camp, and she has her work cut out picking that team or choosing the players to be part of that group. There's the depth of guards is tremendous, and even the battle for who's going to play inside is going to be awesome. You've got a number of players there who are already playing WNBL. You've got a number of players who have shown what they're capable of under 20 nationals and everything else. Renee does have her work cut out. I was watching from afar, and she's a great young coach. She's going to be tremendous, and they're in great hands. And I'm sure they'll compete really, really well at the World Cup this year.
And Lockie, I'm going to leave the last two questions to you.
Because we did, speaking of under 19 Women's World Cups, where you have won a silver medal, what are your other personal highlights from coaching, on or off the court?
It's funny. One of the highlights that I have, I go back to Morwell. I go back to my first time coaching, and I had a kid by the name, and I remember her name. Her name was Brooke Mawson. This kid wasn't the greatest player, wasn't the great at anything, but she couldn't make a shot. And over 2 years, she couldn't make a shot. And when she finally made her first basket, it's something that I remember for a lifetime. Like you see this kid, the parents come down from the stands. I think everyone stopped the game, and it was just something special. And that's a highlight for me. Like to see a kid develop and get to a point they could do it and make a shot. That's something else. Other highlight, obviously, being at the 2019 World Cup and being part of the staff there and nearly stealing, or we should have won that gold medal. USA stole it off us. So, and then obviously going to Hungary was something special, and being part of that. We lost by 40 in the rounds to the USA, to a name that is pretty synonymous now, Caitlin Clark. I think she hit 6 threes in the second quarter of our game, and then to shut her down in the final and then lose by only 16 showed how much progress we'd made in a week. And the Lauren Betts, the Caitlin Clarks, the Diamond Johnson, Helgo, those names are all now the stars of the NCAA women's tournament. And I think that to me, we put our best foot forward there. Unfortunately, we didn't win that game, but we made them call a timeout because we were in front in the first quarter. We made them go to zone, so there's some minor victories amongst that. But that was special. Obviously, Siebel title in 2017 was something that was really good. Obviously, we had a great season with Geelong, with the Super Cats there, and we'd built a team over 3 years. That was probably what was the most special. And a young Agnes Emenepu was part of that team, and Eve Brasilis. They were both sort of just turning 16 and part of that group. And to see Agnes now go on with TCU and do what she's done, I still think she's the best defender in the world and the only player that's ever shut down Rin Howard. And I hope in the future she'll be part of our Opals program and make an impact there as well.
And I guess finally, the question we always bookend our interview with is, who is Herbie off the court, away from basketball?
You probably have to ask my partner, Rochelle. So, no, I guess I think age is catching up with me. I've mellowed down a lot. I study basketball now. Like I finish basketball, I go home and try and find a new drill or a new way to do things. Or I love watching college basketball this year. I took a particular interest in the SEC. I looked at different ways they playing the game and studied that. And I'm about to finish my master's, long overdue, but I've got 2 units to go, and I've got doing a specialization in performance analytics, which is something that I'm not very good at. So I decided to try that because it's something that a lot of the young coaches are very at. So I've taken the time to, I guess, do a specialist fill with my Masters of Sports Science and to take that on. And that's been a challenge, but I'm managing it quite well. And now I only have 2 units to go, and I'm excited to finish in June.
Well, you say you're not very good at it, but by the end of the 2 units, you'll literally be a master.
Yeah. Don't know. I don't think that, but yeah, it's been like I can visualize data now. I can visualize statistics. I can bring together a seasons and do a review and things like that. So I've had to learn to write code and script and everything like that. So it's added a new skill for me. I can write the AMS. Like I have an idea how to write AMS now, the athlete management system, all the background work of it. So I think it's a skill that definitely I would have liked to have learned a lot younger. It gives you an advantage in terms of actually understanding what's happening with the area of data. Peter Lonigan tells me I've become a nerd, so I take that on board from him. But it's been good. I think it's something that's really kept my mind racing and developing, and that's what I think it's about, is just trying to get better each day. And like in that COE environment, you've got to try and be state of the art with what you do, and to look online and to develop drills and things like that. That's part of it all. And I think a lot of it gets overshadowed by like your selections and things like that. But the work you do in the background is enormous. And I don't think a lot of people realize what you actually do to make it all work and function. So.
Well, you'll never be without a job, Herbie. If the whole basketball thing falls through, at least you will be able to go into coding or something similar. I can see you with all the young kids at Canva at the head office in Sydney in their open office plan and free lunch and stuff, hanging out with your masters in analytics. Do you think that could be a safe retirement plan, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it does give me some, like, if I ever get to the point, I love running around on the court. Like today I was out trying to defend, and I was getting, I would say I was supposed to be a dummy defender, and that's pretty easy for me. So just basically, when I stop being active on the court, which is hopefully still 15 years away, I'll have something to fall back on. So that'll be good.
And we do actually have our first YouTube comment since we've started to stream eScott Game live using StreamYard. It is from Dean Andrews, who is just the absolute treasure trove of knowledge with all WNBL stats and facts. He has confirmed that Belinda Snell holds the record for most three-pointers in a WNBA game with 12 when she played for Sydney against West Coast in 2005. Dean, your work is never unappreciated. We appreciate you, A, watching live and also confirming that stat because, that's very, very helpful. Helpful to know. There we go. We still know something in there.
12, that's a lot of threes.
That is a lot of threes. How many times do you think the opposition coach was yelling, get a hand that game, given that you have to throw three defenders by that stage, right? Yeah. By the time she's hit her fifth, you've got to be throwing everything at her.
No, she's one hell of a player, that's for sure. So.
But Herbie, hopefully you are having a great time at Opals Camp. When does Opals Camp wrap up down there in Melbourne?
It actually wraps up Thursday. We're flying straight up to Brisbane Thursday night to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the Under-18 National Championships, which is I can't wait to get there and see all the kids play from all the different states. So.
Yes, and me living in Brisbane only just realised today that it's in Brisbane, so I thought I should probably make some time to go and watch it myself on the weekend, so I may see you at some stage over the week. I promise I won't disturb you while you're working, or I won't be looking over your phone to see what names you've got crosses next to for potential COE athletes.
I'll throw that smoke bomb anyway, it'll be right.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds like you have an endless supply of smoke bombs for the right situations.
I wish I had something now. It'd be really a big effect, and Hamish would love it, I think.
Hamish would really love that. You know what? I probably could have prepared a clip just for that moment and taken you off air while the smoke bomb went up, but that's okay. We'll know for next time. And are you allowed to tell us what's going to happen next with Opals Camp? Because I know that the team are together ahead of the Trans-Tasman clash in May, but is there anything more we can expect from the Opals during the year?
No, I don't. I know about the Trans-Tasman, and obviously there's Asia Cup will be coming up. So I think there's a real focus on those two things and doing as well as they can and putting the best team on the floor. So there's not too much to report in that space, but they look great. I think it's an exciting time. Some real young talent in there, like the Ball Aces and Nadia Poch and a few of those. They're going to make a real impact on this program. And then I think that next generation coming through, look out. You'll see an NBL one this year, and I'm sure a few of those are heading toward they'll be Opals in the future.
Yeah, very exciting. I think Lockie and I really enjoy watching a lot of junior talent and then being able to follow their career, through under-19s Australian teams and then making their WNBL debut and eventually to the Opals, for athletes like Izzy Morgans, as Lachlan mentioned before, being able to watch her play for North as a junior and then seeing how far she's come now. It's a joy for us as fans. Hey, Lockie?
Yeah. It is. And selfishly, it's fun to be able to say, I knew it first.
No, she's a great kid. Like I said, she holds a place in my heart. That effort she gave at the tournament was tremendous. So.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I'm looking forward to when she comes back to NBL 1 East eventually and see what she does next. But Herbie, we have taken up lots of your time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight live for ESCOT Game, especially while you've been busy at Opals Camp. Hopefully we'll be able to see you up here in Brisbane at the end of the week. And best of luck to you and the COE women's program for the rest of the NBL 1 East season.
No, thank you for having me on. It was great. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm very pleased to hear it. And I think with that, we've covered the rest of our regular segments for this episode. But just a quick reminder that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at ESCOT Game. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. But remember, if you're unable to watch our episodes live, you can also catch us on all of your regular streaming platforms. But before we go, Lockie, there's one more thing we need to say, and that is...
Don't sleep on the 8th.